All right, this is going to be a quick demonstration of our first exercise, which is compositing raster images together. We're going to use line work. And so I am going to look at weapon schematics as a form of digital art. I'm just going to search for them in Google. And then instead of looking at websites, I'm going to go to image searches. And because I want these to be print quality, I'm not just going to take any old image it gives me. I'm going to modify my search parameters so that the size is not just large, because that's only 1,000 megapixels, or not 1,000 megapixels, 1,000 pixels. I want larger than 6 megapixels, which is more like 3,000 by 2,000 pixels. That's going to limit my selections. I'm also going to change the type to be just line drawings. And so now I just have images I can use here. My preferred way of finding images to use is to right-click on them or control-click and then open them in a new tab. So you see it opened up in a new tab up there. I want a combination of 5 of them that I can use. I want them all to look somewhat similar in style, but contribute their own attributes. So I've got 4, I need 1 more. Let's see. All right, now, this is what I like to do. I kind of make my browser window smaller and I go through each tab. I view the image in full scale to make sure it's not a really bad image. That's a pretty clean scan. And then I simply click and drag it over to the desktop. View image in full scale, make sure it's not a bad image, bring it over to the desktop. You can also right-click or control-click and save the image as, and then navigate it to the desktop. That will do the same thing. You'll notice some of them are GIFs, which is the earliest form of digital art, a graphic interchange format. Some are PNGs, which are more common and more modern form. And I'm closing my images as we go. It looks like this one had trouble downloading, so I'm going to capture that one again, and that's the one I right-clicked on and said Save Image As. So there are advantages to just doing the click and drag when you're on the Mac operating system. And it looks like it was, let's see, this one. So again, I open the link in a new tab, I view it full size. Now I'm just going to drag and drop over. If I would have left it open, it would have downloaded fine. I'm just trying to go a little fast here. Now I can close Chrome, I don't need it anymore. And now all of these reference images I'm going to open in Photoshop. To do that, I can't just click on them, otherwise they'll open in preview because they're online formats. So I'm going to select them all, right-click or control-click on them, and open them with Photoshop. When Photoshop opens multiple images, it puts them in individual tabs, just like in an internet browser now. And so I want to float them all in individual windows. So I go up to Window here, Arrange, and float all in windows. So now I should have all 5 like this. You want to understand Photoshop a little bit. It tells you a lot about each file right in the window. So it tells me that it's a PNG file. It tells me that it has a limited color mode. So this is a grayscale mode. I want to change each mode to be full RGB color. So I'm going to go through first, especially with these that are indexed or bitmap, which are very limited in what you can do with them. And I'm going to change their mode to RGB color. For bitmap, that means it only sees black pixels or white pixels. So first you have to convert it to grayscale, and then you can convert it to full color. The reason I need to do this is simply because they were very limited as online images to save memory, and I want to be able to do more with them. So here's another bitmap. First I have to convert it to grayscale. It's going to ask a size ratio, and I just want each pixel that's black to turn into 1 pixel, so a 1-to-1 ratio. And then I can go to image mode and convert it to RGB, and image mode, grayscale, and then image mode RGB. So now they're all RGB, which means they'll all work together, and I can add color if I want to. What I like to do is I'll hit F9, and I'll get a sense of all the images and which one do I want to be kind of at the base level. And I think I'm going to use this one as my foundation image. But just to make it really interesting, I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of this image. And there's a few ways to do this. My preferred way is to use a shortcut, Command J, and that makes a duplicate. I can also drag the layer itself down to the new layer icon, and that will make a duplicate. I can also go up to layer and say duplicate layer, and that will make a duplicate. But Command J is what we'll use for duplications. It gives a perfect copy on a new layer right above. Okay, now, why did I do that with layer 1? Well, it unlocked the layer. It allows me to transform it, to rotate it, to move it, and to erase from it. So I'm going to hit Command T to transform. And that's a shortcut. You can do that under Edit as well and Free Transform. You see the shortcut right there, Command T. Or I can do specific transform commands here. But Command T is so useful because if I hit it, I can, in one step, rotate, scale, even flip it, flip the negative. I don't know if I want to do that because it has letter forms in it. If I want it to scale and not distort, I have to hold down Shift. So, Command T, rotate it the way you want, hold down Shift, drag from a corner and make it the size you want. That works fine. Now the problem is I want to make sure that these are all printable. So instead of working with each one individually, I am going to start with just a blank piece of paper. And that's the best way to control the scale. So I'm going to go to File, New. I'm going to call this my line art jumble exercise. And remember, we always put our names at the beginning of anything we save in this class, so we can find it later. And our default size, and it will remember it once you've started it, is 8 inches by 10 inches tall by 350 pixels per inch. That will give us a nice printout. So I'm going to say OK. Now I have a blank background sheet. I can swoop that out. And now I am simply going to take these other layers. I'm going to use the Move tool, drag and drop them all onto this background. Oh, I have to convert this again. I took it back in history. The reason they need to be RGB is so you can drag and drop them and they'll all work together. So there's my first layer. Then I can close this. Here's my next layer. And I can close this. I'm going to speed up a little bit here. Okay, now I have them all in Photoshop together. In order to get them to be transparent so that the black lines show through, I changed the blending mode of each layer to multiply. That lets everything underneath come through, like they're printed on transparency. So I'll just have a jumble of black lines. And now I can go through each layer, and I like to do it 2 at a time, and rotate them using Command T. And to lock your transformations in, you have to hit Return when you're done. The layer has to be selected, not just turned on. This one I need to shrink a little bit. But because I opened my file with 8 inches by 10 inches at the right resolution, I know all of these are a good size for printing. So I can shrink them or enlarge them as I see fit. I can move the layers into different orders. And I'm on my last one. Put it in just like that. So that looks pretty interesting. So now, all I need to do to finish it off is to get rid of the stuff I don't want. So I'm going to go through each layer and just loop around the things I don't want with my selection tool, my lasso, and then hit delete from each layer. The new lasso tool in CS6 targets from the tip of the arrow instead of the tip of the lasso. So that takes some getting used to. That's different from earlier versions of Photoshop. But once you're used to it, it's actually a little bit more accurate. Notice I can draw my loops well outside of the format, and that's just fine. Now I'll turn them all on. And I have my cartoon jumble. If I want to select all of it and move it, I'll use the move tool to draw a box through all the layers. And you can do that by holding down Shift, selecting all of them, and then the move tool will move them all together. So you can select multiple layers or just one layer, but most operations will only work once you have a single layer selected. But the move tool allows you to move multiple layers together. And I like to do this, make one selection and then just delete through all the layers. All right, to save it, I always save as. It's going to be a Photoshop file to the desktop with my name, supporting multiple layers, and then I'm going to save it again as a JPEG file, which is flattened. And as long as it's under 5 megabytes, it will be good for loading up to the internet. All right. Okay, now to finish up this exercise, that gun in the middle is kind of overtaking everything. So I'm going to mess with it a little bit. And I'm going to erase parts away. Now I can do that with the lasso. I can do it with the eraser tool, but I like the lasso because it's just kind of all or nothing. And certain lines that I think are too strong, I'm just going to delete. The idea of this project is to really get used to working with layers, kind of the push and pull of layers. Letting things come forward, come backwards, rotating. It's not necessarily important that everything is so recognizable. And if you want to look at something a little bit more up close, the shortcut is Command plus to zoom in. That might help you make some of these selections of what you want to erase. And Command minus to zoom out, and then a very handy shortcut is Command 0 to fit everything up on the screen as large as possible. So if I'm really zoomed in working on something and then I want to go immediately to seeing everything, just hit Command 0 and it will fit full on the screen. If there's something you want to delete but you're not sure what layer it's on, you can always select around it and then just delete through the layers. But be careful because sometimes it's just a smudge on your screen, which is why we try not to touch these screens. But yeah, both of those were actually little things in the file. Because my screen is beautifully clean right now. All right. So are there other things? Let's see. That's looking a little better. Not seeing a gun so much anymore. Gets a little bit muddied over here. So maybe I'll take out some information from certain layers over here. I don't know if I need that figure 2. And that's going to be it.